Topping today's news, a young man shot and killed on Peter Street on Tuesday night. POP chairman says the Grand Bahama Port Authority is making a mistake challenging the Prime Minister publicly over issues in Freeport, Grand Bahama. The Senate begins debate on the fiscal budget, and Government House rededicated after much-needed repairs. Another murder here in the capital pushes the country's homicide count for 2023 to 53, according to JCN's records. A 26-year-old male was gunned down on Peter Street off Blue Hill Road. Here is Police Press Liaison Officer Chief Superintendent Crystalyn Skippings with the details.
Sometime around 9:20 p.m., our department was notified of gunshots being discharged Peter Street West in the area of Blue Hill Road. Police responded and on arrival discovered a male with multiple gunshot injuries lying next to a chain link fence. Our preliminary information thus far revealed that the victim was clearing the fence of shrubs when a dark-colored small Japanese vehicle pulled up. It is reported that a male exited that vehicle, opened fire on the victim, hitting him multiple times. EMS responded and confirmed no vital signs of life.
She goes on to say that police are following significant leads, but she makes this appeal to members of the public.
We do appeal to members of the public, especially those who reside in this immediate area who would have seen or heard something. We're asking you to kindly give our detectives a call at 502-9991 or 2, and just to let you know that your identity will not be revealed.
Chief Superintendent Skippings also announcing a new initiative for the police, which will include community forums.
These forums are going to allow us to sit with the residents, talk with the residents, see what their concerns are, and together we will come up with sustainable solutions to improve all communities throughout the Commonwealth.
Chief Superintendent Skippings thanks Bahamians and residents for your continued partnership with the police. Over the past few weeks, there have been a number of robberies, increasing armed robberies here in the capital. On Monday, 2 armed robberies resulting in stolen vehicles. They occurred just within minutes of each other, one in the Carmichael Road area, the other in the Johnson Road area. Chief Superintendent Skipping says these robberies will likely continue because residents are not being vigilant and you're not following the advice from the police.
In order for crime to occur, 3 things must be present. There must be a suitable target, there must be something of value, and the opportunity must present itself. What we see happening with armed robberies in our country is that armed robberies are occurring because the opportunity presents itself. Persons are not being vigilant, they're not remaining on the alert. When our people travel abroad, we are always on high alert. We rarely are ever robbed.
It is unfortunate, but Chief Superintendent Skippings encourages residents to stay on high alert at all times.
The moment that you let your guard down, you can become a victim. Like I said, they're all crimes of opportunity. And so if persons would just make the necessary adjustments, if you have to speak to someone, I keep saying it, go inside your home or meet at some respectful place. Do not stand in front of your home late hours in the night having a discussion or sitting in your cars. When you do that, you're making yourself a target.
The Grand Bahama Port Authority contesting Prime Minister Philip Davis's statements in the House of Assembly on Monday that the Grand Bahama Port Authority owes the public treasury money. The Prime Minister also said that over the years it has been the government doing the work of the Port Authority by attracting investors and investing in Grand Bahama, which brings into question the relevance of the Port Authority. The Grand Bahama Port Authority states that the Hawksbill Creek Agreement contains commitments on the part of both the Grand Bahama Port Authority and the Bahamas government. The projects mentioned by the Prime Minister, specifically healthcare, education, the airport, and the Grand Lucayan Hotel, are actually government commitments, not Grand Bahama Port Authority commitments under the Hawksbill Creek Agreement. The Grand Bahama Port Authority, in contesting the Prime Minister's comments, The Grand Bahama Port Authority, in contesting the Prime Minister's comments, also noted that it is yet to be satisfied that the government's purported claims, which have lain dormant for more than 50 years, are justified and supported by credible evidence. They are, however, being reviewed and will be fully addressed. The Grand Bahama Port Authority says it remains focused to advance the economic and social development of Freeport despite the challenges. The licensees and residents of Freeport, however, also deserve a new day where government and the Grand Bahama Port Authority are working together positively to propel Freeport's economy forward and ensure a positive future for all residents and licensees on the island. As the Prime Minister continues to apply pressure to the Grand Bahama Port Authority to do more to help revitalize the economy of Freeport and, by extension, Grand Bahama, PLP Chairman Fred Mitchell finds it shocking that the principals of the Port Authority would publicly challenge the Prime Minister in a statement released on Tuesday. In a video statement also released on Tuesday following the Grand Bahama Port Authority's statement, Chairman Mitchell had this to say about the matter.
I'm really quite shocked that the Grand Bahama Port Authority has the temerity to issue this statement to challenge the Prime Minister in public over this. They know what the facts are with regard to their own situation. They simply do not have the money to carry the city where it needs to go. Right now, for example, if you want to get across the bridge out of Lukaya to get to East Grand Bahama, they can't fix the bridge. They don't have the money to do it. It's unfixed. And then the laughable proposition that they had where roads in this country cost $1 million a mile, they announced that they're going to be spending $600,000. This is a joke to what has to be done in Freeport.
The PLP chairman went on to say that there is no need for a public spat, but the fact remains that the issues in Freeport need to be addressed.
The question is not a tit for tat on who's responsible for what in the Hawksbill Creek Agreement. You can have a legalistic argument all you want. The point is, overall, the citizens of Grand Bahama and Freeport and the Bahamas know that right now the Grand Bahama Port Authority is failing in its duty to the city, its residents, and to the country. The model is old. It needs to change. They do not have the capital to go forward. So politically, they are making a serious mistake by challenging the Prime Minister in this way.
Mr. Mitchell, who is also the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the Public Service, says the Prime Minister has the support of the Cabinet, the party, and the general public to revitalize Freeport, which is the economic engine for Grand Bahama. Senators began debate on the 2023-2024 national budget today, that's Wednesday, after the debate wrapped up in the House of Assembly late Monday night. Leading off the debate was Minister of Economic Affairs and Leader of the Government Business in the Senate, Michael Halkitis, who says this budget is the most important budget for the country in its 50 years of independence.
Over the years, our priorities across various administrations, our budget priorities have always been education, health, security. And that commitment has been demonstrated by, over the years, the amount of the budget that is allocated to those sectors. In recent years, beginning as far back as 2008, following the global financial crisis, unfortunately, we have seen debt and debt servicing assume an ever-increasing amount of our budget, a larger and larger share. And when I say we have those commitments and those commitments to education, to healthcare, to security, that those have by and large been consistently what the priorities of successive administrations have been, I would venture to say, Madam President, that the way forward is to continue a consistent commitment to those three priority areas demonstrated by a continued investment, an ever-increasing investment in those sectors.
Senator Halkitis noting that over the past 50 years, there have been investments in the expansion of education and health across the country. He noted that going forward, these must be maintained along with investments in technology, training, and human resources, among other things. He says while resources are limited, this administration must prioritize the way it allocates its resources.
This whole budget process relates to the allocation of scarce resources amongst various commitments. Scarce, meaning that our resources are not unlimited. And so any government, any administration must prioritize the way that it allocates its resources. And those resources are determined by a few things. For example, the total value of all the goods and services produced in the country. So our GDP determines the level of resources that we have. The amount of revenue that the government is able to extract from the economy. Put simply, the tax burden that the government is prepared to impose. That determines how much revenue that the government collects and the resources that are available to meet its priorities. And thirdly, Madam President, the amount of borrowing, the amount of debt that the government is willing to undertake.
The economic minister said for the Davis administration to restore the country's fiscal position, it is the government's commitment to grow the economy, improve revenue administration, and exercise strict expenditure controls while identifying new sources of revenue. He says that is the plan that has already bared fruit, and it is the plan the government will continue to execute as opposed to increased taxes. And finally, in this segment, with restoration efforts beginning in June of 2020 during the Minister administration, Government House received its blessings and rededication today with Prime Minister Philip Davis along with Governor General Sir Cornelius A. Smith in attendance. Members of both the government and the official opposition took a tour of the mansion that received blessings from Bishop Laish Boyd. Prime Minister Davis made the following remarks.
Today's ceremony also marks a new phase, a renewed stage in the life of one of Nassau's most iconic landmarks, Government House. Weathered by time and a subtropical climate, the premises had begun to lose its luster, aging, as we all do, until finally it came time to restore the grounds and the building to their former glories. Today, we mark the completion of that restoration process. The walls have been painted, the trees pruned, the beams expected, and the facades replenished. Many hands have labored to repair this impressive property that sits atop Mount Fitzwilliam, and the results speak for themselves. Today, with the blessing and rededication of Government House, we recognize the start of a new epoch in the landscape of our capital.
The Governor General, who was heavily involved with the restoration project, spoke of the momentous occasion with one of the country's national treasures brought back into commission.
I see the front lawn being turned into where we put an amphitheater, where we were able to invite artists and artisans who would school choirs, church choirs, community choirs. They could come for an evening in the gardens where they could enjoy the talents of our many artists and artisans. I see a developed lower gardens where we can develop a vegetable garden for two reasons. A, we could use it to feed the governor and his staff for those items which could be grown here.
The Governor General says Government House serves as the front door to the Bahamas and thus should represent the best of the Bahamas. He believes Government House should not only be used as a residential space, but as a place for all gifts and works of Bahamian art. We'll take a break here. We'll be right back after these commercials.